actually a billionaire? And if he is a billionaire, why is it that it seems that he can't pay a measly, I don't know, something like $450 million right now for the bond? So as usual, we are a tribal country. So depending on which tribe you are, you probably have a very simplistic black and white opinion about the answers to these questions. And I'll tell you generally what they're going to be. So if you are on the right, you have an overinflated perception of your knowledge of finances and how business works. And you, because of this, you look down on the left and you'll probably make comments about how they don't know how business works, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is you actually also don't know what you're talking about. And I'll explain. In your mind, you think to yourself, or you've been told to think, and you say it as if it's your own thought process, but you think that, the left is being ridiculous. They don't know how business works. The way business works is that someone who's a billionaire is not going to have $1 billion in their bank account. Now, this on the surface is correct, but there's further details that you don't understand. So yes, that's your thing. You say they wouldn't have that kind of money in the bank. Maybe you know a little bit more than that, and you can say why. You talk about, them, being limited by FDIC. I think it's $250,000 in terms of the insurance. So if I have, $251,000 in a bank account, only $250,000 of that is insured. So if the bank goes under, I get back the $250,000, and then the remaining money is just lost because insurance only covers up to that amount. So therefore, if I had $100 million, it would be stupid of me to put that in a bank account because a mere fraction of that would be insured and the rest of it would be uninsured, and I'd have the risk of losing it. That's a lot of money to just lose like that. That would be foolish. So you wanna put that money someplace that it's safer. Ideally someplace that it can accrue interest or grow. So you want to invest in art, real estate, stock market, whatever it is, right? Diversify your portfolio. So props to you if you know that much, right? But again, it's like you have a little bit of information, and then it lets you feel like you really know what you're talking about, and you've gone too far. You recognize some of the gaps in information coming from the left, and you jump on them and say, oh, that's not how it works. And it's not that you're saying totally false things. It's just that you don't understand the full process, right, of what you're talking about. You just have some basics. So that's going to be the general thing. I think that's going to come from the right wing. If you're in the right wing camp, that's what you're going to say about, this explanation why he doesn't have the money. If you're on the left, again, cartoonish thought process, ideas that are probably not your own, ideas are probably handed to you by the media you consume, but whatever. Maybe this is actually your opinion. But number one, your brain is going to be fogged, just clouded with the idea of Trump is a fraud, right? In general. Further than that, he's not really a billionaire, right? No actual basis behind that. Just, this is what you've heard. This is the narrative you heard, and you're going to go and put it out there. And then you're going to say things like, if he's a billionaire, how come he doesn't have that kind of money? Because rightfully so, the right wing were correct in your not understanding how business works in terms of what I just described, in terms of why they wouldn't have that amount of cash. But you're not thinking about that. Your brain is all, Trump's a fraud. Anything he says is a lie. He's not a real billionaire. These are all the talking points that you've been fed, right? So that's your response. You're not thinking deeply at all. You're just going based on that surface level. So the right wing is surface level. Oh, he's not going to have that money in the bank account, blah, 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 right? Left wing, surface level. He's a fraud, doesn't have that kind of money. And if he's a billionaire, this is a tiny amount of money, right? That's so cartoonish, both views are. So now let's hear the perspective from somebody who's actually informed, a little bit more informed rather, on the subject, not an expert, but I certainly know more and deeper than those two points of views. And my views are not coming from the media that I consume. My views are coming from my independent understanding of high net worth individuals, investment banking, and basically how someone like a Donald Trump, in terms of net worth, how they operate in terms of their allocations of assets. So the way I look at it is, yes, I recognize Donald Trump being a fraud. I recognize him as being a bad business guy. But when I think deeper than that, my assessment is he's probably a small billionaire in terms of his net worth. I would say he's probably worth maybe 2 billion or 3 billion or something like that. Hard for someone on the left typically to recognize that, because again, all you're thinking about, oh, he's a fraud, da, da, da. But I would say he's probably worth about 2 billion, 3 billion, and that's just me giving a rough estimate. Don't read too much into that. That estimate is boosted further by the lack of him being able to pay this bond. And that makes sense. If he, and that's the thing, on the left, they wouldn't understand that. They would say, if he's worth $2 billion, how on earth can he have that kind of money? And I'll explain why not. But that makes sense to me. If he's only worth $2 billion, it's not surprising that he wouldn't have that kind of money. And it's not because of the reason that the right is saying. So the way this would actually work is someone like Donald Trump would have to, again, diversify their assets, right? So you have this 2 billion. How do you get to that number, right? You're going to be adding up a bunch of different things, right? Some of that's going to be in cash. Some of that's going to be in stock. Some of it might be in bonds. Some of it might be in real estate, right? So all those different assets, right? The cumulative value of all of it, if his net worth is $2 billion, would be to $2 billion. But the key detail that I think both the left and the right are missing, because again, I don't think they are really thinking about it. It's just like whatever your tribe is saying, and they're just repeating it. The detail that you're missing is, so I gave you the fundamentals, right? The assets would be diversified, right? You're not gonna have all his money in one thing or the other thing. That's kind of a safety mechanism, right? If I put all my money in real estate and real estate crashes, that puts me at a huge risk to take massive losses. But if I have some of my wealth in real estate, some in stock, some of it in cash, then if one sector takes a hit, potentially the other sector actually takes a boost, or at least it doesn't take a hit. So it kind of balances it all out. So I'm never at extreme risk of any particular sector. Now, obviously, if we have a massive crash in the economy where it doesn't matter what you're in, real estate is down, whatever it is, just you name it, all the areas that you might invest your money in, it's all down. But even in that case, some would say I invested in gold, right? So maybe in that situation where the market, everything's tanking, maybe people run to gold. And if you have gold holdings, potentially you actually get a little boost there. You take big hits in multiple sectors, but you take a big boost there. But let's get down to the details, the nitty gritty of why it would make sense to me that Donald Trump is both a billionaire, small billionaire, but both a billionaire, but also not surprisingly unable to afford $400-something million. Now, I'm just giving you rough numbers. Don't quote me on this, but generally speaking, if Donald Trump had a net worth of $2 billion to $3 billion, I would expect that the amount of his holdings that is in cash, so meaning the amount of his net worth, so if he's worth $2 billion, the amount of that $2 billion that would be in cash, meaning he could go to a bank. Well, you have to make a phone call. They're not going to have that kind of money sitting, but he could go to a bank theoretically and, request this amount of money in cash. The more than likely, and I think it would be typically about 20% to 30%. Don't quote me on that, but something like that would be in cash potentially. Now your financial strategy can vary. It's not like this, because I'm a billionaire, this is exactly what I do. But there's certain systems, just like normal people. I think they say something about 30% of your income should go towards your housing or something like that. Again, don't quote me on that. But that's just a general rule. There's certainly people who spend 40% or 50%, right? They're getting a more risky type of people. Other people, more risk adverse might limit it to like 20% of their income if they could pull that off, right? But based on general principles of, money management, I would expect about 20% or so, more like 30% of his holdings or of that 2 billion net worth to be in cash. Now, do the math on what that is. I'm not gonna, I don't have a calculator right now, but that number I think is going to be very, very close to the amount of money that he needs to come up with. And I would guess slightly under. So the amount of cash that a typical 2 billionaire would have available would be very, very close to the amount that they want, or more likely less than. So again, it would not be surprising. Now add to that, if that business person is not a good business person, is not good with their money, right? Not good about running their businesses, takes a lot of potential risks, that number could get even lower. So it would not be shocking to look at a billionaire, 2 billionaire, who, might only have about 100 million in cash or 200 million in cash, which is less than half of what he needs. That would not be surprising at all. That is something that would be kind of expected, I would think. So here is the reality. The things that don't add up is the way Trump's lawyer described his worth. First of all, I don't know all that she's involved in with Trump, but again, don't quote me on this, but surface level, I haven't been paying that much attention to what she's been doing. I don't know that she would necessarily know his net worth, right? Unless she's involved with something that's, directly involved in his finances, or maybe there's a court case where it's all about the money, or maybe the fact that they're looking for this bond, and as a legal proceeding, if he says he doesn't have it, he needs to prove it. So he proved it to her, so she's seen the numbers. I don't know. Unless that's the case, I wouldn't expect his attorney to necessarily know what his net worth is, right? Because he has so many things going on. That is a complex thing. It's not like just because she's an attorney, she would know. But regardless of that, she made a statement that he's a multiple billionaire, billions and billions of dollars. Now, that's not a specific number, but to say he's worth billions and billions of dollars, you're implying that he has, like, at minimum, like 5 billion, 10 billion, or something like that. Because if he's only worth $2 billion, I don't know that someone would normally say he's worth billions and billions. I mean, you could say, well, the first billion is 1 billion, the second billion, billions, but billions is plural, right? That's why I would say I would start at like 5 billion. If you're saying billions and billions, if you're saying billions, billions means plural, so that means multiple billions, and then you said it again, so the minimum to say billions would be 2 billion. And if you're saying that twice, that takes you to 4 billion, right? If he really was worth $5+ billion, he should absolutely have enough money to pay the bond, right? So if you believe what she's saying, then it doesn't add up that he doesn't have the money to spend. However, the idea that he's a billionaire and can't afford it, that makes sense if he only has like 1 billion or 2 billion. So I believe the truth is he's only worth 1 billion or 2 billion. And if that's the case, then it would make sense that he doesn't have it. But if you believe the message that his lawyer wants to put out, that's where it doesn't make sense. You can't be that level of billionaire and don't have the money, right? But again, the left wing, their view is, how can a billionaire not have this kind of money? Very easy. He would only have about 30% of his net worth in cash, right? The 2 billion would come from real estate, from stocks, from all these other things. And by the way, even stocks, right? If he has a healthy stock portfolio, which, that would be ridiculous if he doesn't, that's fairly liquid. It's not as liquid as cash, but I mean, there's ways. I mean, it's the thing with stocks at his level, Like, you wouldn't want to just dump a whole bunch of shares, right? Because you can move the market move against you. That can be something that's very bad, right? So when you're, for a normal person, yeah, if you have $10,000 in stocks, you could just like liquidate all of that if you needed $10,000. For someone who is like Donald Trump, who needs like hundreds of millions of dollars, it's not as easy, but there is a solution, right? That is definitely available to him, which is you use algorithmic trading strategies, right? Where what they do is they'll break down your trade over time. So that's the reason why making it not as liquid as it would be for us normal people, because you could just close out an entire position, sell all my Apple stock just like that, and then I don't know, settlement in like 5 days or so, 6 days, whatever. So you have the cash available. So you could look at your stock portfolio almost as cash, but not quite, right? The cash is like instantly available, with a phone call, because withdrawing $10,000 just like that, that's not going to happen. You want to call the bank. I would assume they could get it to you within a day or two. So within a few days, you could have all of your your position in your stocks for a normal person. But again, somebody like Donald Trump, hundreds of $1 million stock position, you can't just do that. So you'd have to break it down perhaps over days. It could be a week, depends on your risk tolerances. So what would happen is they would use software, and it would just be sending out, sell 1,000, sell 1,000, sell 500, sell 2,000, sell 3,000, right, over time. And they would use certain strategies based on when those orders are sent out and how much is sent out over time. And so you could have this happen over a week or 2 weeks or something like that, to completely liquidate these positions. So let's say he has a position that's worth $200 million and he wants to use that to pay the bond, right? Then he could enter these orders to liquidate that amount, but it wouldn't just happen right away. It would be over days. And then after every transaction, there's a settlement process where you go from stock to cash, right? So that takes a few days after that. So it could take him a couple weeks to get hundreds of $millions from a stock position, but that's not that long, right? I think he definitely has that amount of time. So it's kind of ridiculous that he doesn't have enough cash, right, to be able to take it from his bank account or bank accounts. I would hope he would be not foolish enough to put all that kind of cash in one account. So he should have enough cash to pull from multiple accounts, and then he should have enough in his investment account, whether stocks or whatever it is, that he could liquidate. And within a couple weeks, he should definitely be able to come up with that kind of cash, unless he only is worth about $2 billion and he's not good at business and he is kind of a risky type of person, which I think is the case. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Don Washington says, Mr. Trump does not have a Mr. Trump. Oh wow, I missed a lot of your comments. Sorry about that. He has had plenty. Let me pull this out. So Don Washington says he has had plenty of time to prepare for this. Correct. If he had the resources, he would have this money at this point. So he must make some choices. One, he's dumb and did not prepare. I mean, that could be true, but I would lean more towards ego, right? The last thing Donald Trump wants to be seen doing is selling his property. I mean, there's such a crazy propaganda bubble that wouldn't like destroy him. I mean, I think it would have some noticeable effects on the margins, right? People that are more centrist, people that are not MAGA. They love Trump, but they're not MAGA. MAGA, I don't know if there's anything that could push them away from him. But on the more center-right people and just non-MAGA Trump supporters, I could see some of them being like, man, look at this guy. All these court cases, and now he's selling his properties. I mean, everything's falling apart. I could see that potentially affecting him. But I think more important than that would be his ego, right? He's supposed to be this Don whatever, and he's presented this image of himself as so successful. I'm a great businessman, blah 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 blah. It kind of clashes with the selling of properties. So again, even though I don't think that would affect him drastically in terms of the reality of what's important, I think it would affect him emotionally, just based on ego. Two, he's bad at finance in a serious way, so not diversified, or he already mortgaged to the hill. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. Um, all evidence that I've seen based on his track record, I think that's probably very accurate. So, I would expect, look at what you would expect from a typical 2 billionaire, and then go down from there in terms of where Trump is. I don't think I don't you would it would shock me if you could present me that he actually has a smarter asset allocation, or his finances are better, not just in terms of the raw numbers, but in terms of, if you were to talk to an investment manager, and they looked at all the numbers, I would just be surprised if they would be impressed and say, "Wow, you have a lot of, like, your risk is at a decent level. It's not too much risk. You're balanced very well." Now, someone on the left would definitely agree with that, because the cartoonish tribal thinking would suggest that he's the one managing his money. But I don't think he's the one managing his money. I think he's hired someone to do it. But this is a guy who hires a drunk man to be his attorney. So what is the competence level of the person who is managing his money? I would not be surprised if it's not very high, if he hired someone based on some kind of, ironically, DEI type of mentality. Like, he's doing a DEI hire for his vice president right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did a DEI hire for, who's managing his finances. Some trivial, ridiculous, just childish kind of thought process of, maybe somebody does, a money manager of some sort who has complimented Trump a bunch. Trump, you're so smart, whatever. And based on that, he's like, yeah, you can manage my account. And then just based on him just being a buffoon and all over the place, doing all kinds of nonsense, not realizing he's being screwed over by whoever's managing his money, I wouldn't be surprised at that. So that being the case, even though it's ridiculous to think he's the one managing it, I would think whoever is managing it is probably not the best. But I could be wrong. There's a corrupt grifter. He's a corrupt grifter, and no one will touch him with this large amount. Hell, the Chubb. That's the other thing as well. Even if he didn't have all the money, let's just say he had, $250 million cash, or $350 million cash. So he has 70% or more of what he needs in cash. The idea that he would have that amount of cash and not be able to find somebody to close that tiny gap doesn't really make sense to me, right? If his net worth is $2 billion and he had $300 million cash, I think that's a little bit less than for someone at that level in terms of, how well you're doing financially. I would say that you get, I don't know, you might get like a C rating if you were to grade it, A through F. Maybe you get a C rating. So not horrible, but nothing impressive either. But it's just a tiny gap. Someone with the kind of assets that he has in terms of real estate and everything that he has going, and also you have that amount in cash. I just can't imagine that, even with all the negative publicity, that he wouldn't be able to find someone to close that tiny of a gap. Now, the difficulty that he's having now would match more if his cash is like super low. Like if he only has, I don't know, $50 million or even $100 million. So an overwhelming majority of what he needs somebody to lend it to him. That, to me, given his profile and some of the cases that are going on, the reasons for the cases, him being, doing fraud, him, overinflating his assets, that's a bad risk profile. And then if he only has a small amount of the money available right now, then it's kind of like, right? So I think that's further evidence that he's not doing too well. He's probably a tiny billionaire, and he's doing um significantly uh, lesser, or he's doing what can I find the word I'm looking for? In terms of, if you were to rank him against the average person that is worth $2 billion, I think he's ranking on the lower side in terms of his finances. If they were to grade, look at the average person and how they allocate their money, and you look at Trump, I don't think he's going to rank very high. So as a bank looking at that, so you only have a fraction of what you need. Your finances are not looking too good. You got this fraud thing going on. That would make sense that he would have problems finding money. But if you believe what he says and his lawyer says, that doesn't add up. If he's worth billions and billions of dollars and he's such a great businessman, even though still that is a significant amount of money, again, most on the left would think, oh, that's nothing compared to, but again, we broke it down. It's not going to be just cash. It's all these different assets, right? And based on the average percentage of cash of that, that number is actually high for a small billionaire. For somebody like Elon Musk, no. Theoretically, again, it depends on how his finances are, right? How much debt he has. But in general, someone at Elon Musk level, not having this kind of money would be like, no, that would be like, whoa, what's going on? But somebody like Trump, if he's really only worth about $2 billion, I'm just guessing. I don't know what he's worth, but that's where my head goes to, based on all the information given. Someone at that level, 400 and something $million is actually a high number. It's only not a high number if your brain is so simplistic that you're looking at $2 billion net worth as like how much money he has in the bank. That's not what it means. All right. Let me end this live stream. What I'm more interested in is, given your caveats about him being bad at business, is why you think he's even worth $1 billion. Just based on all the assets that he has, right? He has a lot of assets. He's invested in real estate, and he made these investments a very, very long time ago. I think it doesn't take much skill to buy real estate. Just about any. Think about it. If you had bought just about anything back when Donald Trump did a lot of his acquisitions, if you're buying up properties in the 70s, in the 80s, even the 90s, does it really matter what you bought in terms of what the value is now, right? So even if you think he's a bad businessman, that's a no-brainer, right? Just the fact that he had the money, which we know where he got that money from. That money was handed to him, right? He had that money to be able to just go and just buy a bunch of stuff, and then how old he is, right? Now, there's certainly people who, in his situation, ended up losing all the money, right? No matter how much money they inherited, they find a way to burn through all of it. And clearly that was not the case with him. But again, you got to look at what he put his money into, right? He put his money into real estate, right? So real estate over this period of time, yeah. I don't think it is that shocking that he might be worth, $1 billion or $2 billion. But again, don't quote me on that. That's not something, I didn't do some deep analysis. I'm just, that's where my instincts are putting me, just based on everything I know about Donald Trump in general. This isn't a left wing or right wing thing. This man doesn't have the security stocks to back a bond. Algorithmic trading strategies. Are we going to hear about crypto soon? You have just said that Mr. Trump has had close to a month to find this money, and he hasn't done it. He has already had this time. He doesn't have the money. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think he is in a very bad financial situation. However, as is usual, let his followers tell it. Nonsense. He's doing totally fine. He just made $400 million just selling sneakers. Yet he still can't pay his bond. Oh, but why should he have to? He shouldn't have to pay it. It's not fair. This is political. It's all political. This is the Payment Channel. The Payment comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. Good to see you, Dawn Washington. And I'm out.